Good day, our viewers, and welcome to the National Question, your weekly program with me, Costa. Today, we want to look at the sincerity of the new dispensation towards the young people see aspirations. And our guest for today is Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition Youth Chairperson, Mr. Pride Mkono. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Costa, for inviting me. Good day, Zimbabwe. Good day, young people out there.
And also on my left, we have Zanu-PF Youth League media team, Mr. Tafadzwa Mugwadi. Welcome to the program, comrade.
Thank you very much, and hello, my fellow Zimbabweans. Revolutionary greetings.
Here you have heard from their introductions. So we want to start to understanding from you, Mr. Pride Mkono, before we delve into the nitty-gritties of our discussions. What are the young people's aspirations? What is it that the youth are voicing out at the moment?
I think what is imperative and what forms the core and at the center of young people's aspirations in Zimbabwe is, number one, their aspirations to be able to access a decent job where they can be able to work, make savings, take care of their families, and live normal and happy lives like their counterparts also in the world. The second aspiration that young people in Zimbabwe have is an aspiration for their government to be able to allow them to access their money, when they in fact have worked for it. So we have young people in the informal sector who work on a daily basis but are unable to access their money simply because there is no money. The third aspiration that young people in Zimbabwe have is to be able to have access to social services, particularly around health and education. Most of our health centers are dysfunctional. The public health system has collapsed. Most of the young people cannot afford to go and have medical checkups in the resort areas where the government leaders go. You talk of Singapore, you talk of South Africa. They cannot be able to afford that. Most of the young people do not have medical insurance. The fourth aspiration that the young people of Zimbabwe have is an aspiration to be recognized as leaders of today and not tomorrow. An aspiration to be able to occupy the commanding heights of both the political and economic system. An aspiration to express themselves as young, sharp minds within the national development discourse. And these are their aspirations in summary. And these aspirations can only be addressed and attained at two levels which they are asking, which they demand, and which the government, any government of the day must be able to provide. Number two, the conducive political environment with attendant freedoms. And number two, economic conditions and policies that ensure that all those aspirations become a reality. So in a nutshell, I can say that the young people of Zimbabwe endeavor to live long, happy, and fulfilling lives.
Mr. Mugwadi, would you like to intervene and say something regarding the dreams of young people? What is it that people are crying for at the moment?
Okay, my intervention is that from what we have gathered so far, in fact, the most important thing is then is to be able to separate between perhaps what I want as an individual and what young people across political divide, across social and economic divide want. So that's the most important perhaps point that I want to notice from what has already been raised by my fellow colleague. Most importantly, I want to take this opportunity, of course, to congratulate the role that young people played in the historic and legendary November Revolution of 2017. Operation Restore Lagos could not have been what it is. It did not have been the participation of young people across political divide, and I think it is very important to congratulate them as an important stakeholder in both political, social, and economic, decision making as far as the direction of this country is concerned. Now, coming to the concerns and aspirations of the young people, basically, having participated that much, it was always expectable that young people would also, expect certain deliverables from the government. May I take this opportunity to say that I'm proud to appreciate that my government has tried by all standards, it has tried by all measures in order to ensure that it fulfills the dreams of the young people, the kind of a society that they yearn to see as far as this country is concerned. And some of the areas is already mentioned, but I'll speak specifically to issues to do with job creation. You will appreciate that most of our young people are employed, but they are employed in the informal sector. And in a Zimbabwe that we dream, they would have wanted to be employed mostly in the formal sector. And because of that, our young people are looking for jobs, and decent jobs that are paying, so that they will be able to cater for their social well-being, they will be able to improve the standards of living of their own families, and most importantly, they would also be able to create social institutions that are part of our culture, like marriage. You'll find out that it is an important aspect that young people are looking for, and they can only be able to achieve that when they are decently employed. You talk of a decent health. I'm glad to inform viewers and listeners that our manifesto as a party, and particularly as a government, speaks to a health issue, a decent health. Young people would want a decent health that is completely different from what they had, perhaps for the past 2 decades, to be more specific, for the past 18 years, when our economy was non-functional. You know the reasons, of course. I don't need to waste my time, explaining them. And I'm happy that the re-engagement exercise that this government has taken on board is aimed at ensuring that we lure the most important foreign direct investment, because certainly that's the only formula that can create jobs for our own people. Foreign direct investment juxtaposed, working in harmony with local investment, will be able to be a panacea for the creation of jobs. There is no shortcut to it. And finally, there are issues to do with education. We have got a considerable number of young people that are in tertiary institutions, for polytechnics, colleges and vocational training centers, in particular universities. Those young people would want to see themselves, graduating and getting decent jobs. But perhaps that is an area that still needs improvement. I'm quite very much happy that our government, led by His Excellency the President, Comrade Emmerson Mnangagwa, who is our candidate into this election, is ceaselessly looking into this matter in order to ensure that we create a society that is receptive to young people's aspirations.
Well, Mr. Mkono, you mentioned a lot of aspirations which you hope to see. I would say the government are putting in place so that life for the young people becomes better or is improved. How sincere is the new dispensation? We are now looking at the current government, specifically from November up to this period. How sincere is this dispensation regarding the dreams or the aspirations of the young people?
I must first flag out, before I respond to that, what my colleague said, particularly when he went on to attempt to sanitize. He speaks so eloquently, like as if the Zanu-PF government is in opposition, when in fact the Zanu-PF government is, the party is in government. He speaks about what the Zanu-PF government writes in a manifesto, when it in fact is in government. I was looking forward that you would give us a breakdown to say, of the 2.2 million jobs that were promised, how much did we have? Of the $27 billion economy, which the current vice president, in fact, was one of the biggest champions of saying, yes, we're going to create 27 billion in the next 5 years, in 2013. But all those things have disappeared, vanished, as if what happened in November when we had a military coup, then he swept away all that. It actually was a coup of Mugabe and his entire documents. The same cabinet that sits today with Emmerson Mnangagwa is exactly the same cabinet that was sitting with Mugabe, giving him exactly the same advice. So I think we had expected a lot of sincerity in respect of that. But I think coming back to what you asked, then say, what are these aspirations? And where is the government standing fed? The same government which started in 2013 and then changed faces, especially for the presidents in November. I think since November up to now, it has been a boulevard of fake promises, of misrepresentations, and of total failure, arising mainly from two things. Number one, you cannot expect reforms when there are no reformers. In Zanu-PF, there are no reformers. These are men and women who have been in power for half of their adult life. They cannot learn new tricks. They're old dogs. I'll give you quick examples in the economy. There was a promise when ED took over that they were going to cut the bank charges for any transaction that is below $10. That's still there. So even if you swipe $3 for a loaf of bread, you're still going to be charged for that. If you swipe a $2 item, you're still going to be charged in terms of bank charges. That has not been addressed. I will show you about excise duty. Right now we're facing one of the massive fuel shortages in 5 years in this country. and people are having to resort to the black market. Because we expected, they promised that they were going to cut the excess duty of fuel by 6.5 cents. They did not do that. So if you look at the whole cocktail, it has been about lies. They said they were going to get 600 million from Africa Exim Bank to ease cash shortages. That never happened. The cash shortages, if anything, in fact, the queues continue to grow longer and longer, as you know. And in fact, the premium for cash has actually risen. When in November, when they took over, the premium of cash for US dollar was standing at 35% for the US dollar. But today you get it at 45, 52% on the parallel market. If you look at the premium for the bond note, it was by then around 7 to 8% with Eco Cash. But now if you're going to change your Eco Cash to bond note, you need to pay something like $14. It has actually increased. So all these premiums are increasing because there was no money that ever came. Then they were talking that we have been assured 3 billion of investments when we went to Davos, which was like, and came back. All those things are not materialized. So in reality, the so-called youth dispensation is hold you.
Let me just hold you. I will give you another time. Just hold. Just keep those moments. Those points. I will give you time to finish up. Mr. Mugwadi, here is a situation. You raised about a lot of positives which the government is doing towards improving the lives of the young people. But then there is a point that you mentioned that there are certain deliverables that the young people are expecting. Would you like to share with our viewers those certain deliverables that the young people are expecting?
I think I've already talked about them when I gave about the aspirations of young people. Those are deliverables.
Well, how sincere is the new dispensation regarding these certain deliverables?
Thank you very much for that question, my brother. It's quite very unfortunate that my young and fellow brother, would speak as if, in fact, he would speak as if he does not come from this society, or he's speaking about another society that we don't know, that we are all not living in. Why I'm saying that is because if you look at, at the time emanating from November up to this time, it doesn't need rather a rocket scientist to explain to you this, tremendous and significant strides that our government has made so far in order to address all those concerns that I've talked about. Let me just talk to the question of education, particularly higher and tertiary education. You'll be quite very much aware that the student leaders met the president. They told him in no uncertain of terms that Mr. President, we have been suffering from a critical crisis where most of our students on attachment have been forced to fork out astronomical attachment fees that the students have not been able to raise, mostly because most of the students that go on attachment do not really receive sufficient payments, if ever they receive any. And you know what happened? I was quite very impressed to realize that within the space of a week, the president addressed that, and the minister had summoned the student leaders to communicate with the students, and it is now operational, that the students on attachment are now supposed to be paid some money from the ZIMDE funds in order to make sure that they will be able then to cushion for what they are, the obligation that they are required at tertiary institutions. Let me come to the question of sincerity.
Let me just ask you something. You are suggesting that the attachment fees has been scratched or it has been reduced? Well, the
attachment fees have been reduced, and the communication has been sent to the relevant authorities.
But
then secondly, the government has also taken upon itself to release funds for students in attachment under the ZIMDEF arrangement to make sure that those students then will be able to pay the little that from what has already been reduced by the government in terms of attachment fees. Let me come to the question of sincerity. It's quite very unfortunate that my brother would speak as if he would expect things to be to happen overnight. Rome was never built in a day. Our government has never promised the people manna from heaven. We don't do that. We know that from opposition, and we know that it is quite very easy to oppose. It is always quite very easy to promise people that you can do things overnight. But the realities of government administration with regards to a country that is more than 16 million people, or somewhere around that thing, is quite very, very difficult, and it takes time. And if you look at the first 6 months, our government was seized with a lot of housekeeping issues in order to ensure that we create solid and strong institutions that will be able to then ensure that the deliverables are delivered. And the government is still in the process of doing that. I'm quite very much happy with the anti-corruption drive that is currently taking place and the creation of the anti-corruption unit in the President's office to ensure that there is a significant prosecution of all corrupt issues. They are brought to book so that our country will then be able to be free of bribe and corruption and so forth. That is one of the evils that has, affected our economy. You understand that our government, unlike what he has said, we didn't talk of 3 billion, my brother. Our government has received more than 11 billion in investment commitments. Why is that? That's so? It's because of the radical engagement exercise that Comrade Emerson Mnangagwa and his team are making to re-engage the international community and important countries that will be able to inject the much needed capital to resuscitate our industries so that we'll be able to create jobs for our people. The United Kingdom has already released $100 million to the business community to ensure that the industries are resuscitated. So that is a very strong diplomatic gesture. It's a strong diplomatic statement from the British.
Let me just hold you on. Let me just hold
but
you on.
on a statement of fact, the British never released any man.
Just wait.
The 100 million that has been purported being done is a medium term.
Just wait, Mr.
facility.
Just wait a minute. I
would want my colleague to know that it's a dialogue.
Mr. Mugwadi, I wanted to ask you a question. You are talking about, we understand all these problems that have been facing this country for quite a long time, but we are more interested into the new dispensation,
exactly.
The housekeeping issues that have been capturing the government. But we want to understand the initiatives which this new dispensation has taken towards improving the young people's lives right now for this past period. Which initiatives would you like to tell our viewers that 1, 2, 3 have been raised by the government? These are the initiatives, these are the programs, these are the projects which are meant to improve the lives of the young people.
Firstly, the most
That's just in point 4.
No, the problem is when you ask me a question and compete with me to answer yourself.
Okay.
So allow me the space to answer.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. The most important thing that, from which young people can flourish and be able to aspire, it is freedom. Our government has delivered freedom, and the freedom that our young people enjoy in our communities right now is a strong, significant indicator that the future is bright. And
so you are saying freedom
when it comes to
an initiative which is made.
It is an initiative because it was, the democratic space was really asphyxiated by the G4 cabal and the criminal elements that people marched against in November. So that is a very important issue because it is from freedom that our young people will then be able to access empowerment, empowerment initiatives from government, free of corruption. It is I'm quite very happy to say that very soon the government started the initiative to create, to institute a youth bank. And the process, I think, is at the finalization stage so that our youth will be able to access funds from the banks in order to start their own businesses, to be able then to become young entrepreneurs or offer this. So that is a very good and noble initiative. Thirdly, young people have been assisted by government to play a significant role in command farming, in command farming exercises. And I'm quite very grateful I'm grateful to suggest that quite a considerable number of young people participated under command agriculture, command livestock, command maize, all those kind of sectors, and they are doing very well to utilize the farms that were given to them under the land reform. Thirdly, I would want to speak of issues to do with construction. You will realize that a significant number of jobs are being created even as these developmental initiatives are taking place. The
Let's give Mr. Mkono some time to respond. Mr. Mkono, you had something burning to address.
No, I think it is, with all due respect, the people of Zimbabwe deserve to know the truth, and the people of Zimbabwe are aware of the truth. And I think we must, put certain things into perspective and, in fact, make them factual. Firstly, I would want to correct my fellow panelists on the $100 million facility, which was in fact availed by Stanchard. The British Embassy actually issued a statement and said, no, this is not money from us. This is private money from private depositors, which Stanchard has offered as a medium-term facility. And when we say medium-term facility, we can assure you that none of the companies have yet enjoyed the availability of that facility for recapitalization. And most of what we talk of capitalization, we're saying there's, because Zimbabwe's nostro accounts, our foreign currency deposits for companies have been depleted. And companies like Delta, for example, need to buy certain machinery from outside the country. They will then utilize this facility to purchase and then bring that equipment here. It is not from the diplomatic community. It has nothing to do with the new dispensation. It was in fact a deal that had been negotiated by captains of industries through their associations, the commercial Zimbabwe industries and many other associations that they conglomerate under, as a way to try and breach the the foreign current deficit that they're faced with. The second aspect that we must quickly deal with is the issue of the fictitious so-called anti-corruption crusade, which is, as we saw recently, netted from money for having 20 bags of sugar beans. In a country where we've lost 15 billion, the arrests that have been made have been quite a mockery. Even if you go to the trials, they have been a mockery. And in that same drive, you have the government of giving a $40 million tender to Mary Chiwenga, the wife to the vice president. And then we're talking of anti-corruption. And then the president, there's a whole commission established by the constitution, the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, and an initial prosecuting authority established by the constitution, which must deal with any cases of prosecution in this country. But if a president who himself, in fact, has been figured when he was summarily dismissed by his predecessor, Robert Mugabe, a lot of dockets around corruption, murder, and fraud came out implicating him when he ran away. And when he came back as president, established an anti-corruption unit. In fact, he's attempting, because this is unconstitutional, clearly unconstitutional, and we don't foresee it surviving, to establish a prosecuting authority right under his office. For why? To cover up what? To do what? And then we go on to the figures. So he was talking about 100 million, they're celebrating it. But let me just run down the figures of what this government has spent since they took over. They spent 3 million on one trip to China. The trip brought nothing. They've spent 74 million to purchase planes that have since gone back for repairing without completing one single trip. They've spent 140 million on wagons that do not fit the kind of rail infrastructure in this country. They've spent 300 million buying Zanu-PF campaigning material from China, externalizing money. They've spent 50 more million on cars for chiefs. This is what you have since November. And this is the reflection of the government that is failing to pay its teachers adequately, that is failing to pay for its to pay social welfare for its socially disadvantaged groups. This is the government that is failing to provide pensions for pensioners who have to sleep long queues in banks. This is the same government that is failing to provide basic water treatment chemicals in all our rural settings where it is a right to be doing so. This is the same government that is failing to repair roads like the Mashingo Bay Bridge Road, which its ground-breaking ceremonies have went on, and our people continue to die in the same roads. So this is the reality of what we have. So this new dispensation is neither sincere nor is it new. To actually call it a new dispensation is to misconstrue what the word new means. There's nothing new. Oh, Mnangagwa has been in Mnangagwa since 1980. Even before that, Chiwenga has been there. Chinamaza has been there. So there's nothing new about these people.
Well, just hold on. Mr. Mugwadi, would you like to intervene, but not in a confrontational manner. But course. I just want to ask you in a specific. During Mugabe era, we used to have youth programs or young people programs specifically targeted toward the education sector. For example, the STEM initiative, which was meant to promote young people in education sector, to promote scientific human capital. Where is the change now? Where is the difference now between President Mugabe and President Mnangagwa? See youth programs, initiatives that are meant to improve the young people.
Okay, thank you very much. But let me first clarify on the issues that I think he has erroneously raised. It's quite very unfortunate. For the first time, I'm getting to realize that the lying demon is cascading on the grassroots, and especially the young people. I thought that lying was only a game that is known to Nelson Chamisa alone, but I'm realizing that even his troopers are adopting the vice, which is quite very unfortunate. Firstly, let me talk about the 100 million that he has tried to dismiss. I would have wanted to ask him, where was that 100 million for the past 18 years in terms? I mean, if you are saying the British government did not participate in it, one thing that my young brother needs to know is that in the diplomatic world, the Standard Bank is an important core of the United Kingdom administration. So you cannot expect the Standard Bank to release money without the sanction and particular, recommendation by the British government. That is why that has not been taking place for the past 18 years, because this country has been under punitive measures by those countries.
They gave 20 million for Youth Empowerment Fund and Akaskwere. 20 million was given by Standard Bank in Zimbabwe for youths and Akaskwere.
Under discussion. Then thirdly, I would want to talk about the issues that he has raised, which speak to the anti-corruption unit. It's self-evident that the young colleague is not a lawyer and perhaps is gate-crashing on the matters that he's trying to involve himself in. Why I'm saying so is because the anti-corruption unit that was created specifically from the office of the president was never meant to usurp the powers of the Anti-Corruption Commission or the National Prosecuting Authority, as the case may be. Rather, it is meant to ensure that there is speedy prosecution of corruption cases. Then secondly, there is probity in the process of doing so. And thirdly, that these cases are tackled in a genuine manner that does not see the current challenges that have been obtaining, continuing. The current challenges that I'm talking about as far as this anti-corruption drive is concerned are, situations where somebody is arrested genuinely for a case, but the case does not, have sufficient evidence and sufficient weight before the courts of law for various technical areas, and that is why the president specifically created that unit. So it's quite very unfortunate that my young brother is relying on guesswork than facts around that.
Mr.
Then let me talk about what he has said. This new dispensation.
Yes,
I think I have a right to answer. I can't leave those lies hanging. Okay. I'm saying this because if you look at when we're talking about a new dispensation, we are not talking about a new person as such. Okay. The new dispensation would not amount to meaning that we must create new Zimbabweans, a new country, and everything must be new. That is not what the new dispensation means. It's a new dispensation in terms of the ways of doing things and the way of thinking and the way of taking the country forward. Okay, that is what is new here. So that Comrade Emerson Mnangagwa has been in government. I mean, it's neither here nor there. In any case, when he was in government, you will be quite very much aware that he was the last voice of reason in the last couple of years as far as the direction of this country.
The voice of reason.
Yeah, he was the voice of reason. I think the cases are many. I can't enlist them.
Let's talk about the government initiatives that, especially in the education sector, which are meant to improve the lives of the people. I gave you an illustration of STEM program. Can we just narrow down towards that sector so that we have got a control?
The most important problem that STEM had was that, okay, firstly, it was a good initiative and it is a noble initiative, and STEM has not stopped. That is one thing that I need to clarify. It has not stopped because it is continuously going on. But what has stopped is the fact that the program had corrupt elements within it. And that is why some students were sent to Grace Mugabe's school in Mazoe, which is one of the most expensive private schools. And the government was saying, why should we use variety of so much of taxpayers' money to fund an exercise within private schools? Yet we have got public schools, we have got government schools that have the potential to drive the agenda of STEM without necessarily taking a lot of money. So those were important questions that any person who is sane and who is worried about public funds will have to ask. And I'm quite very grateful that our government was able to probe those issues. Then secondly, this country will, of course, require science, engineering and technological education and mathematics. Mathematician is an important code for striking industrialization. But you cannot then say, we are now disprioritizing those that are not in the areas of sciences. What do you do with this? What do you do with teachers? What do you do with English teachers? What do you do with those that are in social sciences? What do you do with those that are in the business sector, which are important drivers of this economy? So our government is now saying, let's at least try to prioritize all areas without necessarily relegating science and mathematics education.
So you are saying STEM is still active, but apart from STEM, which initiative is this new dispensation come up with in terms of addressing or in activating something as an alternative towards, since STEM is now inactive? Which alternative has come in now?
Can you rephrase your question? I'm not really getting.
I'm saying STEM has been suspended, as you say, but it hasn't been eradicated from the system. It is still there hanging. But what has replaced it now towards the education sector for the young people?
Right. Firstly, let me say the process of coming up with a replacement, if ever the STEM issue is supposed to be replaced, does not really happen overnight. This is the challenge that we are running away from the past, where the people that felt that they would decide for the public. We have got students, they are an important stakeholder. We have got lecturers, we have got teachers, those are an important stakeholder in the areas of education. They must be, they must be consulted, and that is why the government is meeting students in Gweru. The president is meeting students in Gweru tomorrow. That is on 1st of May and 1st of June in Gweru at the Youth and Students Convention. The idea is to rope in a variety of voices so that you come up with a policy that is tangible and that is the buy-in of the people. This is what we call participatory democracy. It is best. You can't say the government should always come up with the blueprints one after the other. What about if it is not what the students expect? What about if it is not what the parents expect? So the most important thing is consultation, and I'm quite very much happy that the president is consulting.
Mr. Nkomo, would you like come in?
I think in a very long and large words, Mr. Mugwadi has considered that there's nothing, they don't have policy. Full stop. That's it. That's the end of the story. There's no policy to talk about when it comes to education.
Yeah,
they have no policy to talk about when it comes to the economy. There's no policy to talk about when it comes to industrialization. They have no. By Simon Kayamo, the current spokesperson of Zanu-PF, said Mnangagwa lacks probity. He lacks probity to be able to do this. So, and now a person accused by the very people he's working with today of lacking probity suddenly makes a head spin and wants to bring probity into anti-corruption crusade. That is unheard of. And surely that is completely unheard of. You know, it is akin to having the wolf being shepherd over sheep to simply eat them. It's clear. So all these issues, if you look at it, there are no policies. And basically I think what Zimbabweans must now come head on with is that we cannot have another 5 years of our time wasted. In 2013, this government was elected. Zanu-PF was elected to form a government for this part. And in 2013, they started to fight for power. And then they diverted the entire country's attention to removing Joyce Mujuri in 2014. They came in and they said, no, now we are in the Mnangagwas, we're going to be driving it. And they broke away again and started to fight, the cat fight among themselves. And in 2017, they couped Mugabe out of power. And now they are telling us that after all what they've gone through for 37 years under their rule, they still actually want a chance. It's actually shocking. Very shocking.
Mr. Mkono,
you know,
we want to be progressive. Let's look at Mr. Mugabe in his own circumstances,
yes,
and Mr. Mnangagwa in his own circumstances.
Yes.
Since he came into power, you have got issues that you have raised.
Yes.
Have you tried to approach his office and hear from his side in terms of addressing the concerns of the young people?
Yes. I think one of the key things that is before President Mnangagwa's table at the moment, like I said, is the issue around financial accessibility. We want our cash. That is the cry every Zimbabwean is made. As Crisis Zimbabwe Youth Coalition, we have come out clear to say we need this cash crisis solved. So that both young people and the generation of Zimbabwe can access their monies from the banks. Why should I send my mother $10 for her only to get $6? Why should it be like that? So we need that solved. We've put it there. We have said we want jobs. We have spoken several times that the economy must be able to create jobs. None of the policy direction we're having is taking that route. We have talked about basic things like cost of data, the cost of data in this country, to be able for young people to be able to watch this program.
Let me just ask you something. He mentioned about the freedom of expression,
yes,
the freedom of engagement,
yes,
which President Mnangagwa has opened. Don't you recognize that as well as a positive stride which he has made?
The freedom to fight among themselves.
Just allow him to respond.
The freedom that Mr. Mnangagwa purportedly, according to Mugwadi, purportedly opened. It's impossible for Mnangagwa to open those freedoms. Those freedoms are constitutional guarantees. You don't need anyone to open for them. We were exercising them under very repressive conditions. No matter how much Mugabe was beating us up, we're simply speaking it out. So he cannot celebrate us to say we're enjoying our freedom of speech when it's guaranteed in the Constitution. That is naive.
So
that is naive. There's nothing progressive about me enjoying my freedom to assemble. In fact, it becomes questionable when someone thinks that it should be progressive for me to enjoy it. It must be, it's a right. It's part of my humanity, it's part of who I am. So for anyone to want to celebrate that we've opened up space as if in the first place they have the right to close it, or they have the right to close it. They don't. It is our freedom.
So in terms of when you are given an opportunity to elect former President Mr. Mugabe and President Mnangagwa, who would you say is better between the two? If you are given an opportunity to
in terms of what? In terms of
everything. In terms of everything, economic deliveries, political deliveries, there are associations.
In terms of everything and associations, Emerson Mnangagwa is in direct proportion to what Robert Mugabe represented.
So there is no difference.
There is same. It's the same creature. It's the same animal on a different day. If Mugabe was a lion on a winter day, this is Emerson Mnangagwa is still the same lion, and on a summer day, it is the same lion. It is dangerous, and it must be treated as such.
We want to close this discussion, but we want to hear from you, Mr. Mugwadi. You are going to meet President Mnangagwa tomorrow. Which issues in specific are you going to table before him that are meant for the young people, the youth?
I will not preempt the issues. Because the young people are going to come and they will come in their numbers and they have to speak to the president. And those issues shall not be tabled by the leadership. because it's an interaction with the president. So youth will come, young people will come from all sectors, from all facets of life, and they will have to speak their issues to the president. So I don't want to prescribe.
But don't you think also it's wise for our viewers to know the issues which you have tabled, which you have prepared to go and submit to the president? Perhaps they might have an input. Don't you want to appreciate their input and contribution?
I don't see what that means to speak about to speak about them. No, right now, then there's no purpose. That destroys the whole purpose of meeting with the president.
Well, let's come to the final. Let's finalize this discussion. How confident are you that the youths are going to be given an opportunity in Zanu-PF and in government in particular regarding this election to also be part and parcel of the political and economic processes?
Thank you very much. Let me reiterate that the first thing that we are proud of as young people who are in Zanu-PF is that firstly, since independence, this is one of the elections where young people are going to participate very actively. They have broken records. The number of young people that have registered so far is quite beyond doubt, and it has broken records. Then secondly, within the party we have allowed young people to flourish, and they've been given an opportunity to contest in primary elections, and a lot of young people came up victorious, and they are going to be, I'm quite very certain rather, that they are going to be parliamentarians in this next term of parliament, because victories are sure. Then secondly, let me talk about the young women. It is quite very unfortunate that young women, and in fact the women fraternity has been victims of the MDC at the moment, and particularly the MDC led by Nelson Chamisa, but we have given them
let's leave out the MDC issue. We want to understand the young people in Zanu-PF and government in particular. I'm raising this question coming out from what have been being fronted on social media platforms, on Twitter, on Facebook and stuff, saying Zanu-PF is still being occupied, top posts are still being occupied by the old people. So I'm asking you, how confident are you that as young people, you will get an opportunity to be part and parcel in terms of political and economic processes in the government?
I don't know how much I need to describe, perhaps myself to see how much opportunity that I've been given. And what I'm doing right now is one of the opportunities in the party. So in the party we are women dry, and I wouldn't want to speak about that. We are women dry and we are clear, and that is why we are here. It means opportunity. Then particularly in the party, that's where it comes to the manifesto. You would not have expected this government to accomplish everything within 6 months. I've talked about housekeeping issues that the government needed to deal with internally, and it cleans the institutions of the ghost of the previous administration. That we have done. Now we are going into the elections. Then what is it that we want to do? I've talked about empowerment initiatives and the creation of a youth bank. Those are tangible issues that we are going to do to ensure that young people will become, will get an opportunity to become competitive young business people in the country. Yeah, you are quite also very much aware that the land audit is still going on, and multiple farm ownership is an issue that is being addressed. And because of that, we are confident that there are young people that did not get land in the time that the land reform took place. Why? Because they have not reached the considerable age of majority, legal age of majority, so that they will be able to acquire properties and become and be counted in the process. So right now we are quite very hopeful that it is a process that is ongoing and young people are benefiting land. May I say to Pride Mkono, if you want land, go and apply to the Ministry of Lands, and you will then you let the process take place.
Mr. President, will you just come in?
May I finally say, we are going into this election. I'm quite very happy that my president has spoken on issues to do with violence. This is one of the reasons that young people have not been participating actively in elections. So for the first time we are having young people participating actively. It's quite very unfortunate that on the other side, which you would not want to talk, which you would not want me to talk in name for the reasons that I still don't know.
No,
but I am saying the question of violence is an issue that needs to be addressed, both in all political parties that are contesting in this election. And it's quite very unfortunate. We have only had one political leader from one political party, who is Comrade Emerson Mnangagwa, the Zanu-PF candidate, who has spoken in categorical of terms against violence. But other parties seem to condone it. They have created a vanguard, which is a violent instrument that is within wreaking havoc at Harvest House. And in the MDC, it is quite very well known. So that's why I'm saying those issues need to be addressed. And why am I saying so? They have a penchant of stopping young people to participate on matters.
You are concluding remarks, Mr. President.
Yeah,
responding as well to...
Just to say that obviously I cannot speak on behalf of anyone other than the young people that we work with and those that we represent. But I think, with all due respect, the reason why anyone would divert from speaking about issues that young people aspire in Zimbabwe is because they know they don't have the solutions. Their government doesn't have the solutions to that. But just to conclude my remarks, I think we've arrived at a very important moment in the history of this country where young people have come out in their numbers and they are, registered to vote. And these young people are very clear in terms of what their aspirations are. And none of those aspirations are reflected within the composition. It's very important. Names matter, people matter. To know this is Mnangagwa, this is Nelson Chamisa, this is Patrick Chinamasa, that is Tendai Biti. That makes, that matters. To know that there you have a Zanu-PF and there you have another political party. That matters. So the composition itself matters. Then you go to the content. What do these people represent? The history of a person matters. No person can erase that which they've the leaders that they carry. And these young people know about this history. The history of Kukura, the history of Rambachi, the history of 2008. All that is known in this country. And there are people who carry that history. So the legacy that people carry, cannot simply be offlated as long as they are alive. Effectively, even in their graves, it will hound them, it will follow them. So for me, as I conclude my remarks, I think the time for young people has come and urge young people out there to, on the 30th of July this year, to go out in their numbers and cast a vote that's going to guarantee them a job. A vote that's going to make a complete break with the past of corruption, fraud, and theft. A vote that's going to create a new starting point for them to be able to dream and live their dreams to fruition. Many young people who are spending their time outside this very building had a dream that one day when they grow up and finish their school, they were going to be doctors, they were going to be pilots, they were going to be engineers. But all those dreams were swept away by a system, not by an individual. A system which today men and women who were part of it, at the very cockpit, at the very heart of it, accumulating, want to disown and disassociate from and purport and present themselves as an alternative. They are not an alternative. So that is my message to young people. Go out and vote, and vote. Your vote must be defined by the very interest that you enjoy and live for.
Just hold on. Well, Mr. Mkono, you have raised very important questions, but I've got only one question for you. This is the last one. Supposedly President Mnangagwa wins this election, and the conditions for the young people, the aspirations as you have raised, no change, no movement, no anything that's going to come into play. What's the option? What's the plan B for the young people?
I think we must disabuse the young people of any notion that the Lacoste crocodile can win an election. It cannot win an election. It cannot win an election. The national election is not a succession battle Zanu-PF before you bring out tankers. I know they've brought a couple of soldiers out there, but that won't work in a national election. National election is a civilian affair, and they must remove from their mind any imagination of a Lacoste winning an election. It is impossible. It is impossible. It is not something that can happen. It's like the sun rising from the west. Mnangagwa simply cannot win an election. He lost in Kwekwe, ran away and hid in some caves in Chirumanzi, Zimbabwe to try and survive politically. He is not electable.
Mr. Mugwadi, do you have confidence that young people can lead this country?
May I say to you that...
Do you have confidence
No. You have asked me a question. When I say may I say, then you are already asking me a question. What is that supposed to be? You have allowed my colleague to speak, okay?
Yes,
so
of
allow
course.
me to speak.
So,
allow me to speak.
Okay,
I have heard your
go ahead.
questions.
You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I quite strongly believe that for this country to be taken forward, it doesn't really need to say we need young people to lead this country only. I don't believe in that. I believe in the importance of all generations. And in that process, what I would want is a generational fusion. If you say young people, if you say youth, okay, then I don't see any youth who is contesting for the presidency in this country. There's no youth. Why I'm saying there's no youth is because the demographic definition of a youth starts at 15, others starts at 16 to 35, and I don't see anyone who is 35. So when
can we conversate? Let's talk something. We are not saying leadership specifically. We are talking to the presidential posts. But I'm just asking you, are you confident that the young people have got the potential to occupy influential
They already
roles
occupy influential roles both in government and in their parties, and it's quite very congratulatory. Okay, so there's nothing new in that one. But why I'm insisting on generational mix, why I'm talking about generational fusion, it is important to balance and have a fusion of experience and upstarts. That is why it's quite very unfortunate. My colleague would say that Emerson Mnangagwa will not win an election in this election. Let me inform him prior that he's going. He must start putting shock absorbers because the terrain is not going to be, in favor of them. We have done our homework. The Ferrari has taken off. It's now head on. We are going to win this election resoundingly. In this election, in other words, there's only one candidate, and that candidate is Emmerson Dambuzo Mnangagwa, who is going to win it resoundingly. You have seen, the Pan-African, result today, which gives Comrade Emmerson Mnangagwa 70%. So it's quite very unfortunate that my brother is sensationalized around the lies and propaganda of Nelson Chamisa that speaks of spaghettos, that speaks of bullet trains, that speaks of
imagination
on people's home states.
That
lies that is the grandchild of the ICT policy in Rwanda.
You are raising very,
very
very important points. Let me just ask you something. You seem to be against the spaghetti roads. These are just ring roads, isn't it?
But they are not just, it's about cost and priority when we are going into this election.
But
you can't come here.
They're used to buying cars
let me just
and
ask
building
you.
mansions. They don't understand this.
Listen, Mr. Mkono, I saw this in the Zanu-PF manifesto. The spaghetti roads, they are there, is their vision as well. So are you now disputing the manifesto?
Let me make this very clear. Our manifesto in print doesn't speak to spaghetti roads.
But I saw it.
No, listen, I'm still answering you.
Okay.
I'm saying read the Zanu-PF manifesto. It has never spoken of spaghetti roads.
Pictures
it
speak
speaks
more
of
than
beautiful
words.
And
Pictures speak more
infrastructure,
than words.
beautiful roads infrastructure that is able to enable business to take place in this country. And those are not spaghetti roads. Beautiful
Those
roads
are
are not
spaghetti
spaghetti roads always. May I also say, okay, that in this election that we are going, it is a very important election because people are supposed to finish off the job that they started in November, which is ensuring that we now
Zanu-PF
have the Zanu-PF government consolidating the gains that we have made thus far.
Well, thank you, comrades. Thank you for making time. I know you have got very overflowing schedules, and we should appreciate by making time to just be on our program. And hello, our viewers, you have just heard it. That was Zimbabwean Crisis Coalition chairperson for the youth, Mr. Pride Mkono, and Zanu-PF Youth League, of course, from the media team, Mr. Tafadzwa Mugwadi. Gentlemen, I should thank you one more time for making time to be part of the National Question. And to our viewers, until next week, keep on watching. Thank you. Do not forget to follow our Facebook page, 263chat, and of course on our Twitter handle at 263chat.com.